All right, good afternoon again. Thanks again for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'll do some quick introductions of the format today, and we'll get right to our presentations. I'll just quickly, housekeeping here, ask our presenters if you can, just put yourself on mute so that while everybody else is presenting, we don't catch any background information or background sound. So we have a great, quick presentation for you today. We got three fantastic presentations. Just as a quick introduction on our end, the people up here on your screen, hopefully many of you know us by name and also by face. Happy to serve many of our clients here on the phone. We have about 200 individuals that have logged into our webinar. If there's ever anything that we can do for you, please contact any of us. We often get clients asking us what other people are doing, and that's really the impetus here for our webinar. Sharing best practices and giving people a chance to hear directly from some other clients that we think are doing a tremendous job in our industry. We also would love to hear from people that are on this webinar. If you have ideas of topics or other related materials that you think would be speakers, that you think would be great for us to focus on in our next webinar, which we try to do quarterly, feel free to shoot any of us a note, and we'd be happy to try to coordinate it. So our speakers today, we have three presentations. We got two individuals that are going to take care of the first presentation. That's Eric Nichols and Dan Stahl from South Carolina, University of South Carolina Athletic Department. They're going to talk to us about their use of data for fan segmentation and some lead scoring. Then we're going to transition to Braden Moore, who's going to talk to us about the use of data enhancements, retention modeling, and some other advanced analytics. And then we will finally switch over to Moon Javed from the San Francisco 49ers. And he has a presentation to show us how the 49ers have worked to enhance the fan experience using data. We will, throughout the presentations, you can submit any questions over, I believe it's on the right-hand side of your screen. We will collect those and we will field those questions at the conclusion of the three presentations. So we'll try to get through the content. We know everybody's time is precious. So we'll get through the presentations. If you have time to stick in and listen to some of the questions, that'd be great. Everybody that registers for the webinar will get a copy of the presentation. So if you do have to duck out early, no sweat. We'll send you a copy of the presentation. And if you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can also reach out to us directly, and people within our office will try to fix those problems you might be having. So without further ado, we're going to switch over, and Dan, give us a second here to assign you rights to control the presentation, and take it away.
Just 1 second. All right, 1 second. It's not transitioning slides for me. There it goes. All right, this is Eric Nichols from University of South Carolina, and thanks for having me, Haynes. I thought we'd begin this presentation going a little bit different than many of the previous webinars. I've been on many of these, and I'm always inspired and intrigued, but I always wonder how I can get South Carolina there, how we can get South Carolina there. So that's where I'm going to pick up this presentation. In 2012, I reached out to Haynes, and I've known Haynes for quite some time, and I said, we'd like to get a little bit smarter in our marketing and business intelligence, and he talked me into doing a pilot program where we appended some data. So in 2012, we had just reset our football stadium in 2009, so we had a lot of open inventory, a lot of new buyers, a lot of people who we had no idea who they were coming into our venue. And the hypothesis was the new buyers were significantly different looking than the previous buyers. So we appended 3 years worth of new sales data. It was very limited expense. and it was helpful, but most importantly, it provided a proof of concept which advanced this conversation about business intelligence here at South Carolina. We were around the department. It was very, most of us were very ignorant to the subject, and it helped us have open dialogue to what is possible. We created some strong profiles of the new buyers. We used that to activate our paid media spend. But again, the most important aspect for us was it moved the ball down the field a little bit. Next, I went back to Haynes and I said, okay, we got a little traction. And I said, I see what your folks are doing, your clients are doing. How can you help us? And his advice, which I still tell folks today, which is true, he says, you don't have to eat the elephant all in one bite. He says, let us lay out a generic roadmap for you, and it doesn't matter whether you get there in a month or in 10 years. It'll give you some direction, and that's the path we've been following here. So we started with identifying a CRM, a data warehouse, and an email client. After looking through the CRM and data warehouse, we quickly realized we're not ready to take that bite of the elephant just yet. It was very expensive and daunting for our staff and our resources here. But we did start with the email client. We researched, I probably reached out to several people on this call trying to get information. We settled on a company called MyEmma out of Nashville. Certainly not the most robust email platform that is out there, but for us and our needs at that time and currently, it allowed us to accomplish what we wanted to do. And primarily, it allowed us to create some automation, mobile delivery, and probably most importantly, some advanced segmentation. From that, I think we've developed some processes internally that allow us to have a lot of success with email marketing based on our database infrastructure. Concurrently, along the last 3 years, we've appended all primary season ticketed sports: football, men's and women's basketball, and baseball. So we got to the end of that road, and we were ready to take another step, which is what Dan Stahl is going to talk about. So I'll turn it over to Dean.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks to Haynes and Erica and Demi for having me on today. Excited to share our successes with the men's basketball program that we did. So, as Eric said, we have all this data, and we wanted to do something with it, with all this new information we had. And that led us directly to our men's basketball program, where we've always had a lead problem and who we're reaching out to sell our men's basketball season tickets. So currently, right now, we have over 16,000 Gamecock Club members. Most of those Gamecock Club members are joining and purchasing football tickets. So within that membership, we only have about 2,300 members who are basketball season ticket holders. That leaves us with over 14,000 accounts that we could call about basketball who are Gamecock fans who would be good leads for us. But how do we prioritize those leads and which ones we're calling? Right now I have a staff of 5, and they're also selling football group tickets and women's basketball and baseball. So it's difficult for us to take that 14,000 and bite off too big of a chunk and not get to the right people within that group. So back in 2014-15, we realized this problem, and we did some rudimentary analytics to figure out who to call. And what we did, we looked at the 15 closest zip codes and filtered those accounts out from that big list and called those as the first calls that we would make. And we had some limited success, and we saw that it was working, but we knew we could do a lot more, and that's what led us to Turnkey to find a better solution. So what we did, we used Turnkey to score all our leads, and they created a model that would give us the 1, 2, 4, and 5-star leads to produce better results for our sellers. So that model produced the following number of leads. We had 850 5-star leads, 650 4-star leads, and 1,120 3-star leads. So overall, that let my sales team focus on calling about 2,600 of the best leads they could, rather than this daunting task of the 14,000 leads that we could potentially call. And these calls are in addition to the normal calls that we'll do. We'll also call our single game buyers, all our mini plan buyers, and all our last season ticket holders, in addition to some other ticket microsite lead pages type things that we do. But with a normally limited pool of traditional leads, the scored leads ensured that my staff always had a quality call to make throughout the entire fall sales season for the men's basketball program. So what happened? How does this work? In 2014-15, our normal men's basketball close rates on a regular lead list would be about, between 5 and 7%, averaging out to about 6%. With the turnkey leads that we had, the 5-star leads closed at 11%, and the 4-star leads closed at 9%. This was a great amount of success that I saw. It was, almost doubling your rates for the 5 stars and a really significant percentage for the 4 stars. But almost as important was it helped to motivate my staff. The staff has, when you put a list of 2,000 calls in front of them, it's hard to get them motivated, especially when they don't get enough initial success. So right from the get-go, if they're calling the 5-star leads and they have a little bit of success, it really lets them be motivated, helps them get back on the phones and really start pounding out the phones and make as much calls as they can because they know they're getting a good quality call each and every time. The other thing I wanted to relay as well was our overall sales results. So going from the time that we started here at South Carolina in 2013-14, we had 550 new season tickets. The next year when we did the limited rudimentary analytics, we had 662. And then with the help of Turnkey last year, we were able to sell over 830 new basketball season tickets. So I know Eric would like to hear I have a goal of 1,000 this year, and I think with the information we have now, we have a really good chance to get there.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. And the only thing I would add to this presentation is the next step of our roadmap is we have identified a CRM and a data warehouse, and by starting at the beginning with a small pilot project, now we're getting, by the end of this year, we'll be at least where we can participate more in some of these advanced analytics. So, thank you, Hank.
Eric and Dan, thanks so much. Fantastic story. We're going to hold some of the questions that have been submitted till we get through both Braden and Moon's presentation. So sit tight and put your phone on mute if you have a second. We'll switch over to Braden Moore, who's Director of Analytics and Insights at the Philadelphia 76ers. And Braden, I think we have given you control of the screen.
Yep, I got control.
Go ahead.
So, thanks, guys. Yeah, so I just want to echo what Dan and Eric were saying about working with the data and not trying to eat the whole elephant at once. The 76ers, we've been using Turnkey lead scores for several years, and we had seen a bunch of success in terms of optimizing who to call for our sales reps out there. And over the last year or two, that kind of opened up an appetite to kind of take some of the data that we get and apply it to more predictive analytics and more of a data science exercise. Specifically, what it has brought us to do is using the Axiom appends that come with the Turnkey scores. These are all interpolated bits of information that give you more information about each of your prospects. So things like education level, presence of children, income bands, house worth, something called Personix X clusters, which is a variable that kind of describes the essence of somebody and groups people into similar labels. So the first thing that we did with these is we made an effort at building our own retention model with these Axiom data appends. The NBA does a really good job collecting information from all the teams and giving you a model to help predict how well you're going to renew your sales base, but one size doesn't fit all for each of the teams. The reality for the Lakers is different than the reality for us, which is different than the Warriors and the Bucks and the Heat and so on and so forth. Our market behaves a little bit differently. We feel like our fans have a little bit different affinity than some of the other teams, and so we really wanted to use this data to try to get a better sense of who we should target at on sale for renewals. Additionally, this is really important. We found that it takes about 3 weeks or so for our sales reps to get through their entire book of business for just first touch outreach. So we can kind of optimize who we reach out to at the beginning of the exercise. We should be able to do a better job saving those at-risk accounts and using all this information to just better optimize our efforts and our work on this front. So we ended up we built a model, we put it in here, and we ended up going with a decision tree. A lot of times what you get with retention models is just kind of a lead score or a number that tells you, hey, this person is X likely to buy, or Y % likely to renew. We went with this decision tree model that ended up taking these variables and splitting off, saying, hey, if this is true at this node, go to the left. If it's false, go to the right. What that ended up allowing us to do is, while the scores are a great holistic look at the quality of a lead, this allows us to see how different variables interact with each other at different levels of depth. So, in this case, we ended up finding that somebody's Personics X cluster, if it was in a high band, a high spend band of these Personics X clusters, that performed very, very differently for people who had a really high attendance rate, as opposed to that Personics X cluster further on. So we ended up basically having each of the reps take a look at this, see how their clients fell down on this tree, and then sort their level of outreach based on that. We saw great success in this first year. We had this ready to go on sale. We showed the reps the information and got them to have the buy-in, which is the most important part, to have the buy-in from the top down. Otherwise, it's just kind of numbers. And we ended up beating the NBA's projections by 13 percentage points. Once we had success on that front, we started to think about how can we work to bring this practice into our general new sales and new business approaches as well. So while these 4- and 5-star leads are really good, and we call them a lot, generally we're feeding them out to the reps and saying, hey, these are just good hot leads, like give them a call. Right now we have the largest sales staff in sports with around 100 reps making calls. So we have the bandwidth to really spread out the market, and with that much coverage of the market, we also then have the ability to go out and try to do a little bit more personalization. So we did something. We took all of these same Axiom appends, and we ran our own what's called a k-means clustering algorithm. And basically, it just takes we took all of like the 4- and 5-star leads that passed through a couple extra quality filters that we had, and said, looking at all the rest of these Axiom data appends and weighing heavily the Axiom variables that we know had performed well in making the 4- and 5-star leads. Give me people who look the same. Give me people who act the same. Give me people who talk the same. This way we can know if we find a sales pitch that works with someone within one of our little micro clusters, it should work better for everybody in there. We know it's not going to work one-to-one, a perfect orientation every single time, but it's certainly going to give our reps a leg up and a better way to focus their pitches specifically on different price levels within the stadiums or different products, whether it's a full, partial, or a group. So we ended up taking this. We took our initial population. We bucketed it down to 5 different clusters of differing sizes, and we looked within each of these clusters for information on like how can we describe these people. So we looked at things like, did their spend go up year over year? Did the number of games they go up? How is their ATP changing? What's their total spend? What types of products are they looking at? In addition to the general Axiom data of, is there a presence of children? Is this more likely to be a family or not? We define success on this campaign by trying to move our clusters to different parts of an XY scatter of looking at total spend and games attended. In general, we saw a strong shift to the upper right, which is what we wanted to see, and we were able to better identify what kind of products to use for these clients. This cluster number 4 group of people that came back from us from Axiom that said, hey, we're not finding a match. We don't necessarily know enough about them to give you the variables back. And we took these leads and put them into a lead nurturing process. So sending them surveys, adding them to our email campaigns, and trying to gather more information from them. We ended up seeing that these guys that we put into the lead nurturing campaign ended up increasing their spend about 30% above those that weren't involved at all with this this clustering algorithm. So we feel strongly that even using these people to identify like, hey, we just need to know more information about these, also worked really, really well. So overall, the Axiom data has been a huge boon for us, and we're really kicking off predictive analytics and data science, and excited to see what else we can put together, what other models we can start building using this data.
Awesome, Braden. Thanks so much. You guys are really doing some impressive work there. So we are going to transition over to Moon, and I'll just give everybody a reminder, as many of you have already submitted some questions. We're trying to gather them, and we'll field them when we get to the end of Moon's presentation. So Moon Javed, who's the Director of Business Strategy and Analytics at the San Francisco 49ers and Levi Stadium. Thanks for joining us, Moon. And I believe that you can control the presentation now.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Well, thanks everyone for participating today and listening in. I'll just get started and really talk through what we're going to be speaking about today, which is really focusing on how to enhance a fan's experience. So it was really interesting listening to the other presentations today, which focused a lot more on selling tickets. Ours is focused mostly on surveys and how we can improve our fans' experience through using surveys. So I'll start really with talking about our Wi-Fi design, and this is really the backbone of really how we're able to do a lot of things we do within our stadium. So traditional Wi-Fi design is really deployed from up top. As you can kind of see from this diagram, it's really a lot of users are really fighting for the bandwidth that's available from up top. We were pretty lucky in that we were able to start with a brand new stadium. Sorry, give me a second here while I think it's trying to get to the next slide. So we were pretty lucky that we were able to start fresh. So what we did is we actually deployed access points under every 100 seats. So essentially, instead of fighting thousands of people, there's an access point for every 100 users, which we find to be great for our Wi-Fi usage. The highest Wi-Fi usage we've had in a game was 4.5 terabytes, which we actually did at WrestleMania. Pretty exciting there. And we can have 40,000 users at one time stream at LTE speeds. In addition to our Wi-Fi, we've also deployed a very strong DAS network as well, so that our Wi-Fi and connectivity could be pretty spot on for our customers. And that's one piece that we feel is very important to making sure our fans' experience is great. Coupling that, the next piece that we have is really our mobile app experience, which is brought to us by Venue Next. So we essentially incubated the company Venue Next, and now they're available in other teams out there to build their mobile app. You can see the main components that we have here: tickets and access, video replays, F&B merchandise, loyalty, and wayfinding. So tickets and access, we have moved to mobile tickets. Essentially, 40% of our season ticket holders do game in and game out, scan in through mobile tickets. So that's something that we're pretty proud of, and we're also able to leverage the data and insight from those customers on the mobile app to help us out. Another big feature that I like to highlight is F&B and merchandise. So we do have in-seat ordering for all 69,500 fans in our building. So no matter where you're sitting, you can have food delivered to your seat or merchandise as well. Want to touch on really our data overview. We do have acquired a lot of data here, 400 gigs of data, 17 different data sources. This does all sit within an Amazon Redshift server. We process 3 million records per day, and we continually try and get better and smarter on what data that we access and how we can leverage this information. We do all of our front-end reporting on Tableau, and we're able to generate some pretty nice charts and make it very appealing for our key stakeholders within the organization. And I'll walk through a couple of slides here really quickly that will highlight what we do. So for us, it really starts with the pre-event dashboard that we shoot out. So a week prior to every event, and we did shoot ours out last night for the Dallas Cowboys game. This is not that slide, but we will show attendance by section, and then we will also show if it's away game fans or fans that are first-time fans coming into our building. And what this helps us with is essentially just staffing and security. So if we know there's away fans that are in certain pockets of the stadium, we'll add additional security in those areas. and if we know if we're light in certain sections in terms of number of attendees that we plan on coming, we might reduce the number of staff in those areas. Next, we actually get to the day of the game. So this is our stadium entry dashboard, and what we do here is we're leveraging the information from our queuers in real time so that we can see where our fans are coming into our building and when. A couple of things that we've been able to do with this is, again, reduce the number of staff that were at our building between the 4 to 3 hours before kickoff time frame, as the number of individuals in our building is not that high. And then it helps us to really ensure that during those peak times we have the full amount of mags or gates that are open for us. We try and keep under the NFL best in class standard of 8 minutes for security wait times, and we measure this through Turnkey, through our survey, and our fans really just attribute the number of minutes they wait at a gate, and typically we see anywhere from 4 to 6 minutes that they're waiting, and that's their perceived wait time. Next, taking a look at concessions. So again, something that we do monitor in real time on game day and then also include in our post-game reports. So we look at, it's pretty hard to read, I'm sure, for you guys, but the 3 charts up top are our walk-up, our in-seat, and our express orders. So you can assess the per caps and also the demand fluctuations there. Something that it's hard to pick out from this slide here, but the express and in-seat orders spike when walk-up has its dips. So that's something that helps us understand if we are really picking up all the dollars that we possibly can. The bottom left and bottom right are in-seat maps, and so we will reprogram those in real time as well. So if we see pockets of red, and that means longer delivery times, we'll route those orders to different stands to help make sure that our fans don't wait longer than 15 minutes. Our stated goal time is 10 to 15 minutes for every delivery within our building. Another interesting piece that we're able to generate from the concession sales is really understanding efficiency and revenue per POS. And we broke it down by stands, and I'll start with the right-hand side as opposed to the left-hand side. If you look at the red circle box that I have there, those are really our stands that were not high revenue, and they were not producing a high amount of orders per minute. And we evaluate this over the halftime period, where we believe there should be infinite demand for our concessions, as they're typically long lines. So if you're not moving people fast, and if it's not high revenue, we should replace those. And that's what we did. And on the left-hand side, we plotted all those on a map. I drew arrows to the actual ones that we did replace this season. So we were able to offer new items for our customers, and in some cases we actually just moved over some concepts or added an additional concept such as barbecue that was extremely popular for our fans. The next piece I want to touch on is the fan feedback itself. So this is our surveys, which are done through Turnkey. We deploy them to everyone that is scanned in our building. So we pull this from our queuers. We'll get all the scans, and then at noon on the day following the game, we will shoot out a survey to all these fans. So it ends up being about 30,000 accounts based on the number of tickets per account. We try and really make this at the same time every single game. We did originally in our first year start to shoot it out right after the game, and then we started to look at responses as time waned. And so the closer you send it to the end of the event, you'll actually see more extreme responses, a lot more negative and a lot more positive. So we figured give people a night to cool off and then shoot it at noon and maintain a consistent time frame with regards to that. The survey is designed at 7 to 8 minutes for completion. Our average response time last year was 7 minutes and 30 seconds, so it did fit our goal there. We do receive about 2,000 responses per game, which we like. It's just about 7 to 8% response rate. And so throughout our time in Levi Stadium, which is our third season, so about 23 games in, we've collected over 50,000 surveys from game days, which has been a tremendous amount of data. And our fans are pretty verbose as well. They do like to write into the comment section. So I would recommend if you start to do the open-end response analysis to make sure that fans to not limit it, because fans complain when they can't write as much as they really want to. Another thing that I'd like to highlight here is we do use the CID function from Turnkey and shoot these out through Turnkey. And what that has allowed us to do is to create some of these maps, well, actually all of these maps that you see here on this slide. So that helps us to identify where the person is sitting, because we can then tie that person through their account number, to their seat location, to where they scanned into our building, to their tenures, you can see on this slide, to their parking location. And that has been really important for us. So the first year that we did generate surveys, we did just show bar charts across the board, and I think that there was a lot of glossed over eyes in those meetings. But when we were able to move to more of these maps and made it more visual for our stakeholders, that was a big move for us, and we generated a lot more interest from our stakeholders across the organization. So just a couple things. I'll start with the top here, which is really the by tenure. So that's one question that we always have is, you know, is it new fans that are more disgruntled? Is it old fans, or is it pretty much the same across the board? In our case, it happens to be we see consistent responses pretty much across the board, regardless of tenure. Also able to create stadium maps that you see on the bottom left, such as the perceived wait time, parking maps. And then this one is pretty interesting, the bottom right one. I really like to use this one, and this is actually from our Monday Night Football game a couple weeks ago. And even as late as last year, in the beginning of the season, I would go to our team and say, hey, you know, our volume scores are pretty low this week. We really need to go out and improve those. And the sound engineer would reply to me, hey, well, thanks for letting me know the scores aren't great. Where do I start? So that was a pretty big moment for me in terms of understanding, okay, I really need to get some more specific actual recommendations. So using the Turnkey CID and coupling that with Tableau maps, we're able to give our team a lot more actionable insight. The last piece I'll just touch on really quickly here is what we do with that information. So pretty much all the charts that you've looked at today will roll up, and we'll do a weekly recap with our key stakeholders. And it's not exactly weekly, it's after every single event. So we'll do two specific meetings. We'll do one with our executive team, so that's essentially VP level and above, so that they can hear all the feedback and all the compiled data from our concessions, retail scans, and survey feedback. We will put together a one-page quick summary on the actual specific recommendations that they can make. So it's not just reporting what the data is, but what we would like to change. We've also learned to focus on some of the positives as well as the negatives. I think as our team is filled with a lot of eager analysts that are looking to make improvements, we often gloss over the wins, and it's important to highlight those as well so that the team doesn't constantly look at you as a source of negative feedback. The day after we meet with our executives, then we meet with the actual team that will execute. So this is really called the managers and directors that are implementing all the plans and recommendations. So we'll meet with them to ensure that nothing's lost in translation between you know, their VPs and them. And lastly, the last step we take is we really collaborate with our service and our PR team. So once those two meetings take place, we'll have what we call it's our fan response team come together. It's our PR and our service team, and we'll actually write out the communication to our fans. So that's really closing the loop, so our fans understand that we are listening to them and we're making enhancements along the way. We really started this towards the end of last season in terms of highlighting and communicating back to fans what we were doing, and it was received very well, and our scores actually did jump up significantly after that communication went out, and our fans, you could see in the verbatim comments, were commenting on, you know, thanks for actually listening to our comments. And I think that's all I had.
Fantastic, Moon. Thanks so much. We're going to jump into some questions. There's been a lot submitted. If we don't get to your question here on the webinar, we will answer your question or match you up with the individual, our presenter that the question was posed to. So if I don't get to it, don't get angry at us. But I'll do them kind of in reverse here, Moon. I've got a couple for you. You mentioned in one of your slides some of the mapping that you do. You can identify away team fans. How do you identify somebody sitting in this seat is an away team fan?
Yes, so A couple ways that we do it. So the first and major is just how the ticket was purchased, so zip codes of where it was purchased. So for example, for Cowboys, we're doing all Texas, Oklahoma, and a couple other states in that region, understanding that that's not perfect. We are also starting, and we're just at the beginning stages of pulling in, using Facebook campaigns and pulling in likes as well. And we're in the beta testing for that right now. But for now, it's really the credit cards that are purchased.
Okay, and I'll throw another one at you while you're on the phone here. You talked a lot about your the surveys that are going out at noon after a game. Is that outside of the Voice of the Fan study that the NFL does, or is that part of that study?
It is outside of the Voice of the Fan. So we work very closely with the Voice of the Fan, and we do compare our results to theirs. They're really strongly correlated, and we've worked with them to adjust the timing of their survey release for us. So theirs is Thursday. So we go Monday or Tuesday, depending on when the game is, and they go Thursday. So ours is a couple days before.
Okay, and last one for you, Moon. You talked about, I think you said 40% of your fans are using digital ticketing. Are you incentivizing those 40% or incentivizing the other 60% to move to digital ticketing?
We are incentivizing the other 60% to move to digital ticketing. Those 40% that there are season ticket holders, they're game in and game out. So they scanned at least 8 games last year of the 10 with their mobile tickets, and we expect that to continue. It's just about moving that number further up. So we do incentivize the 60%.
Great. Okay, Braden, hopefully you're still with us. I have a couple to pose to you. When you were talking about your k-means clustering, a question came in asking how you deal with null values with the Axiom data.
In general, in this, we saw one cluster that we had a large percentage of nulls, and we kind of grouped those together. We also just started appending basically like an average spend for each of the values. K-means clustering needs numbers for everything. You can't use string variables. So we just said, okay, a person with this, primary vehicle type in general over the last X number of years, this is how much money they've spent, and it's, index it across all the other possibilities within that variable. And then in that way, we just used it null just as a different value for it. We decided that probably the fact that these are coming back nulls says something about the person or says something about their general purchasing behaviors, and that we should treat that just as any other value or selection within the variable. The other thing you could do is just drop observations within that, but we wanted to make sure that our population was as big as possible.
Okay, and a question that's very similar, and I'm going to read it verbatim because I don't want to misspeak here, but in your decision tree, can you have non-binary factors? Some variables will be continuous, so curious as to how you would treat those in the decision tree.
Yeah, so you can have both. A decision tree can handle string variables where, if it's a binary yes/no, go left or right. If you give it a qualitative variable, something like education level, it will spit back and say, if it falls in one of these 3 bands, go left. If it falls in this other one, go right. And if you feed it a continuous variable, it will say, if this number is above some threshold, go left. If it's below that threshold, go right. So it can handle all 3 types of those variables.
All right, great. Eric and Dan, I have a question to throw your way, and I think we also on our end can help answer this question. But in the scoring models that you discussed, what are some of the data fields that are used in those scoring models? And again, we're happy to jump in there if you want us to take that.
Yeah, feel free to jump in, but I think when we were going over it, there was about 60 plus variables that were used, and about 13 of them were the primary variables. But it's the normal stuff: the demographic info, do they own a car, do they own a house, what their income level is, all those different factors. And feel free to add anything that I might have missed.
Yeah, I look at the variables in two buckets: demographic data and then behavioral data. In the demographic data, that's typically the Axiom data, and that's your demographics, your household information, a lot of wealth variables, lifestyle information, and again, there's about 150 variables that get put into the model, and in Eric and Dan's case, about 60 may have played a role in the models. The behavioral bucket of data is data that's specific to South Carolina. It could be historical purchases, frequency of buys, quantity of buys, and we look at that across their current base and then across any of the leads that we are looking to score to attribute a score to them. One last one that I'll throw out to the whole group, and I suspect this came from a aspiring young executive on our call, but what analytics tools would you recommend an entry-level person start to study, whether it's R or SQL, anything that any of you on the phone would recommend to somebody? Again, I'm assuming this comes from somebody that's looking to advance their career in the sports analytics world.
I did all of the work on the data science models in R. I really like it because it's free and it's open source, so there's a lot of people putting out packages already out there for you, so you can actually repurpose a lot of other people's work.
Great. Anything else?
This is Moon. I recommend all the above. So we have guys on our team that use R, SQL, and I also don't downplay Excel. We do all of our survey work in Excel, and it's a very powerful tool for quick and dirty analyses as well, which are certainly helpful for our team.
Great. Well, guys, everybody that dialed in to listen, and especially to our presenters, thanks so much for your time today. For those people we didn't get your questions, we will follow up. Everybody will receive a copy of the presentation, and we appreciate you taking the time to dial into our webinar. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.